Greetings, sir. My name is Christopher Michael Cooper. I am a proud and humble member of the Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, the Delta Alpha chapter. I was initiated in 2005. I'm currently the voter registration, education, and mobilization chairman for the states of Ohio and West Virginia. That is our 4th district, and it is an honor to have you here today, sir. I do want to say thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to speak with the men of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated in our 4th district, which does include Ohio and West Virginia. Our organizational reach does include thousands of members, their households, family members, and those who reside here in Ohio. We are all your constituents. We're very interested to learn more about you and your campaign platform. I know that we don't have much time, but it is an honor to have you here, sir.
And mine too, Mr. Cooper. And the fact that the Divine Nine, including you, is getting a lot more attention is a good thing for our country. So
yes, sir.
Thank you for that.
Okay, I won't take much of your time. I'm going to jump right in here. Senator Brown, Brother Brown, sir, as you're aware, Omega Psi Phi is a historically Black fraternal organization. And so our members and their families are interested to know how your work as a U.S. Senator has had an impact on communities of color and specifically African-American communities throughout Ohio.
Yeah, thank you for that. My commitment always has been to voting rights. I'll start with this. My mother grew up in a small town in Georgia. She was very involved. She helped to found the Ohio YWCA Council. And YWCA always, its mission for over 100 years was to eliminate racism and to empower women. And that's how I was brought up. I look for opportunities to fight for justice. I'm a major push behind the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. In Cincinnati, I've worked with starting a national group to kind of resuscitate, if you will, historically Black cemeteries. And one of my best narrow but best accomplishments in Cincinnati, there's a town called Lincoln Heights, which is an all-Black suburb of Cincinnati. It was the first elected Black-run city north of the Mason-Dixon line. I was talking to a councilman there who told me about 3 years ago, he said, my town's got a problem. I said, what's that? He said, the Cincinnati Police Department shooting range is in my city. And I said, what's that mean? And he said, it means that all day, 300 days a year, if your family lives in Lincoln Heights, you hear gunfire all day, 300 days a year. We went to work. Come next year, that shooting range will be moved out into a rural area, and we will clean up. We got $4 million federal dollars. We will clean up that site with all the lead and all the contamination. So it's things like that. It's the child tax credit and voting rights on a big level. It's what I can do for individual communities and individual people on the personal community level. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I want to kind of go into our second question. Now, healthcare is another hot button topic in this election. It's especially important because Ohioans voted to enshrine reproductive rights in our state constitution in the 2022 midterm election. If you are reelected, what will you do to ensure that those rights and the rights to affordable healthcare for all Ohioans are protected in the next administration, sir?
Yeah, I plan to work with President Harris on these issues. I was part of the effort last year in Ohio. 57% of us joined together to guarantee abortion rights for Ohio women. My opponent, and I don't want to talk a lot about him, but elections are about contrast. My opponent wants a national abortion ban, no exceptions for rape, incest, or health or life of the mother. So that's really clear to me. But and also on something that affects, I think abortion rights is a huge issue, but people for everybody, keeping in place the Affordable Care Act, what we called at the time Obamacare, and now it's called the Affordable Care Act. I helped to write parts of that bill when I was earlier in my time in the Senate. I want to see an expansion of Medicaid in every state. I want to make sure that we focus on CHIPS, on kids' health care. I want to see investment in children's hospitals. We have in Cincinnati and Akron and Dayton and Cleveland and Toledo, all over our state. We have really good children's hospitals. They serve everybody regardless of income, and we need to focus better on all of those things.
Absolutely, I agree. Moving forward, I thank you for those answers. Now, on our November 5th ballot, Ohio voters will be asked to vote to establish a redistricting commission that will be comprised of nonpartisan citizens who will be responsible for adopting state legislative and congressional redistricting plans. What is your position on this initiative and why, sir?
Oh, I strongly support it. We've seen, there's since the Supreme Court essentially struck down voting rights. We have seen in state legislature after state legislature an assault on voting rights. With that has come in intensive gerrymandering, so that Ohio, frankly, people aren't represented because of how they've rigged the system on voting rights and rigged the system on redistricting. So I strongly support it. It's supported by the NACP and the Urban League. The president of the Urban League in Cleveland lives next door to my wife and me. And I talk to her frequently about all kinds of stuff. And it's important that we pass issue 1. But I'll leave you with another little story, if I could, Mr. Cooper.
Absolutely.
I was Secretary of State many years ago. And one of the things I did, I called the McDonald's Corporation. I asked them to help us on voter registration. They printed up 1 million tray liners. You go into McDonald's in Toledo or Youngstown, they put a paper mat on the tray. That piece of paper was a voter registration form. We got thousands of people to register because they ate at McDonald's. And even 5 years later, you could go to the Board of Elections in Columbus or Dayton or Toledo, and you might see a registration form with what mustard stains or ketchup stains. That's what we did in those days because we wanted to make sure people had the right to vote. We have a situation now in too many places, including in Ohio, where the Secretary of State's mission seems to be make it harder to vote, to make it harder for young people and people of color, especially to vote. And that's just morally wrong. And we've got to do better. And that's why we passed the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, and the partner bill with that should be one of the first things we do after the election.
I agree. Moving forward, what are your top legislative priorities should you be reelected to another term in the U.S. Senate? And again, can you please be as specific as possible with what you intend to do if reelected?
I'll be very specific. We need to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. We should make permanent, or at least 10 years long, the child tax credit. We should take on corporate greed that leads to higher prices in groceries and prescription drugs, like we cap the price of insulin, but it should be more than that. We should make more of housing more affordable by taking on predatory investors who come in and buy up large tracts of land. Jan Michelle Carney, the vice mayor of Cincinnati, I was with her in an area of Cincinnati, a pretty low income area, where these Wall Street predators had come in and bought up major tracts of land, driving prices up, evicting far too many tenants. We need to do all those things quickly to protect the public and protect voting rights and move this country forward.
Yes, sir. Now, I want to kind of pivot forward. We've read about your endorsements from various trade unions in Ohio. Why do those unions support you? And more importantly, how has the work you've done in Congress supported Ohio's workers?
Well, I always put workers first. I follow the dictum of Dr. King, who always talked about the dignity of work. And Dr. King was able to weave together voting rights with worker rights and human rights and women's rights and civil rights. And when you look at, Dr. King would say, I don't have the words exactly, but you can't really have civil rights and voting rights until you have worker rights. They go together. And my focus has always been on workers. One of the things I've particularly enjoyed working on when we've passed this infrastructure bill, and we're going to see a lot more construction. Most construction workers look like me, not like you. They're mostly white men, and I want to see more opportunity. So we've worked on something called Building Futures, where we bring in a lot of people of color, of both genders, people of color, to get them a certificate, if you will, so they can join one of the building trades apprentice programs. So you become an apprentice carpenter, electrician, or millwright, or plumber, or bricklayer, or roofer, or carpenter. You start off in that program getting educated in the trade. You start off at somewhere $19, $20 an hour. Within 5 years, you're making in excess of 30, sometimes $35 an hour, plus benefits, plus retirement, plus pensions. And and you do that without college debt. So a young black or white man, or a young black or Latino or white woman gets one of these apprenticeships. And they're way more open to people in a more diverse way. Within 5 years, they're going to be making a good, strong middle class wage. And when I went to their graduation, I spoke at their graduation in Columbus. And they weren't kids, they were in their 20s mostly. A couple of them were 19, maybe, or 18. They all had a T-shirt on that said "Path to the Middle Class." So and these are kids that maybe they don't want to go to college. Maybe they love working with their hands and building things and making things. More power to them. And as I said, they can do all this without debt. They get paid while they're getting trained in their lives. It's hard work. They're working outside in cold days in February. They're working outside in hot days in July often. They're building stuff, things they can be proud of. It's good, strong middle-class union workers.
Splendid. Now, going forward here, a television ad is sponsored by the campaign of your opponent, Mr. Moreno, and it states that you support open borders and amnesty, big government spending, as well as late-term abortions. Are those accurate depictions of your stance on these issues? And if they are, why? And if they are not, what is your position on these issues?
Well, they're lying. Independent fact checkers have found these claims to be false. They don't want to talk about the real issue. Politics is about contrast. I'm for women's right to an abortion. He wants to take that right away, no exceptions. I'm for the dignity of work. He has a finding against him. He had to pay $400,000 in back wages to his workers who he denied. He cheated them out of their overtime. Then he destroyed them. I want a higher minimum wage. He wants not a keep it at $8. He doesn't want a minimum wage at all. So he doesn't want to talk about those issues. He'd rather lie about border issues or government spending or making up stuff about abortion. But the contrast is clear. Fact checkers have pointed that out. I'll continue to move forward in those issues.
Excellent. And then kind of here as we wrap it up, I know we're getting close to time. Is there anything else that we've not discussed that you would like Ohio's voters to know about you expressly? Our sister organization, Delta Sigma Theta, Kamala's organization, Alpha Kappa Alpha, our brother organization, Kappa Alpha Psi, and the rest of the Divine Nine. Is there anything that you would like us to know? Why should we continue to support you, and what can we look forward to if we support you?
Well, I will continue to work with the Divine Nine as I have, and you can count on that. I think you can look at what elected officials done in their past to help to predict the future. But I've taken on the drug companies, taken on Wall Street, taken on the oil companies, and that's why they're spending millions. I mean, there's more money spent against me already, $120 million. There's more money spent against me than any race in the country. And that's because I stand up those interest groups. I knew they were going to spend it. I knew I'll be outspent, but we'll have enough and we're going to outwork them. Our grassroots efforts are better than I've ever seen in this state anywhere and anytime. And we'll continue to do that. It's not, as I talk to groups, I say, I don't need to tell you how important this race is. I need to tell you how important you are to this. I can say that very well. I don't need to tell you how important these elections are, but I may need to tell you how important you are in these elections. And I have just seen a grassroots outpouring in every part of my state, rural, urban, Black, white, Latino, men, women, everywhere, of all kinds of walks of life. People are out there, they know, and I want to just tell them again how important they are to this election this year, to the Senate, to the presidency, to all elections.
Thank you. So with that, we have just a few seconds left. Can you remind us of some of the greatest things you've accomplished in your term?
Yeah, child tax credit, fixing pensions, working on fixing that terrible problem in Lincoln Heights, what we've done on lowering the cost of insulin. I could go on, but I've gone on enough and I'm already over time and you're going to cut me off. So thank you, Mr. Cooper, for having me.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And thank you for speaking to our community and our organization. We greatly appreciate you. Thank you for taking our invite. We'll definitely make sure that we get this out to our brotherhood. As you know, we're all about the truth and getting that word out there. So again, sir, thank you so much for this opportunity. Omega greatly appreciate you, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Cooper. Appreciate it.
Enjoy. Grace and peace, sir.
And to you.
Okay, that's 15.